I'm Amaya, 34, and I never thought my life would take such a dramatic turn. 7 years into what I believed was a solid marriage, my husband Daniel asked for a divorce because he wanted a real working wife. Little did he know I had secretly built an online business generating $500,000 annually. The irony gets even deeper. After our divorce, Daniel married Jessica, my supposed best friend, thinking he'd upgraded his life. But karma has a beautiful way of serving justice exactly when it's needed. Let me tell you my story. Before we begin, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Hit that subscribe button and leave a comment below so we can connect through these real-life experiences. I grew up in a middle-class family in Seattle where education and career were highly valued. From my earliest memories, my parents instilled in me the importance of independence and professional success. They both worked full-time jobs to provide for our family, and they made sure I understood that financial self-reliance was non-negotiable. During my time at the University of Washington, I threw myself into studying marketing and business. College was where I truly found my passion for creative business solutions and strategic thinking. I loved the challenge of understanding consumer behavior and developing campaigns that could influence decisions. My professors often praised my innovative approaches to case studies, and I graduated with honors ready to take on the corporate world. It was during my senior year at a campus business networking event that I met Daniel. He was studying accounting dressed in a perfectly pressed suit and exuded a sense of stability that immediately attracted me. We started talking about our career aspirations, and I was drawn to his methodical, practical approach to life. Where I was creative and sometimes impulsive, Daniel was careful and planned everything to the last detail. Daniel came from a traditional family where gender roles were clearly defined. His father worked as an executive while his mother managed their home and raised Daniel and his siblings. Despite this background, Daniel seemed supportive of my ambition, which made him stand out from other men I had dated. After graduation, we both landed jobs at respected firms in Seattle. I joined Matthews & Bell, one of the city's top marketing agencies, while Daniel secured a position at Wellington Accounting. My career took off almost immediately. Within 2 years, I had been promoted twice and was managing major accounts for the firm. Daniel progressed steadily as well, though at a more conventional pace. We dated for 3 years before Daniel proposed. Our wedding was modest but elegant, just as we both wanted. We were young professionals with student loans and big dreams, so we kept expenses reasonable. We invited about 100 guests to a beautiful venue overlooking Puget Sound, and I remember feeling like my life was perfectly on track. With combined incomes, we were able to save for a down payment on a home in a nice Seattle suburb. The 3-bedroom house with a small backyard represented everything we had worked for, and we spent weekends painting walls and shopping for furniture at IKEA. It felt like we were building something meaningful together. It was during a corporate retreat organized by my company that I met Jessica. She worked for one of our client companies, and we instantly connected over our shared experiences as young women navigating male-dominated business environments. Jessica was confident, outspoken, and seemed genuinely interested in my friendship. When Daniel and I set our wedding date, I asked Jessica to be one of my bridesmaids, and she enthusiastically accepted. After the wedding, Jessica became a regular presence in our lives. She would join us for dinner parties, weekend brunches, and even some holidays when she couldn't travel home to her family. Daniel and Jessica developed their own friendship, which I thought was wonderful. I was happy that my husband and best friend got along so well. The early years of our marriage were happy. We both worked hard during the week and enjoyed our weekends together, exploring Seattle, hiking in the surrounding mountains, or hosting small gatherings with friends. We talked about having children eventually, but agreed to establish our careers first. This is where the first signs of tension began to appear. Daniel's parents started asking about grandchildren almost immediately after our wedding. Each time we visited them, his mother would make comments about my biological clock ticking or show us articles about the risks of delaying pregnancy. Daniel would laugh these comments off in the moment, but later suggest that perhaps we should start thinking about a family sooner rather than later. I wanted to achieve certain career milestones before becoming a mother. I knew that even with the most supportive husband, having children would impact my professional trajectory, and I wasn't ready to make that sacrifice yet. Daniel said he understood, but I could sense his disappointment, especially when his younger sister announced her pregnancy just 2 years after her wedding. This fundamental difference in our timeline became an undercurrent in our relationship, never quite resolved, but never directly addressed either. It was the first crack in what I had believed was a solid foundation. By our 5th year of marriage, I had reached a senior position at Matthews & Bell, but the achievement came with unexpected costs. The higher I climbed, the more toxic the environment became. I was working 60 to 70-hour weeks, constantly fighting to have my ideas taken seriously in rooms full of men who seemed determined to talk over me. One particularly difficult project became the breaking point. We were handling the rebranding of a major technology company, and as the lead strategist, I faced constant scrutiny and undermining from male colleagues. The stress manifested physically. I developed insomnia, my hair started falling out, and I caught every cold that circulated through the office. After one especially brutal meeting where my direct supervisor took credit for my campaign concept, I went home and broke down. Daniel found me crying at our kitchen table and listened as I explained how unbearable work had become. "Maybe this is a sign," he said, surprising me. "You've always talked about wanting more creative freedom. Maybe it's time to look for something else." His support gave me the courage to resign the following week. I had saved enough to cushion us financially while I searched for a new position, and Daniel assured me he was comfortable being the primary earner temporarily. I felt relieved and grateful for his understanding. However, as weeks of job searching turned into months, Daniel's patience began to wear thin. What started as supportive questions about my job search turned into pointed comments about our finances and my contribution to the household. "Did you apply for anything today?" he would ask each evening, his tone increasingly annoyed. The truth was that I had stopped actively looking for corporate positions. During my time at home, I had started helping a friend with her small business's marketing strategy. The results were immediate and impressive. Word spread, and soon other small business owners were reaching out asking if I could consult for them as well. A light bulb moment struck me. Rather than returning to another toxic corporate environment, I could start my own digital marketing consultancy, targeting small businesses, an underserved market that couldn't afford the big agencies, but desperately needed expert guidance. I set up a website, created profiles on freelancer platforms, and started building a client base. The work was fulfilling and allowed me to use my expertise without the corporate politics. Best of all, I could work from our home office while setting my own hours. For reasons I couldn't fully articulate even to myself, I decided not to tell Daniel about this new venture right away. Perhaps it was fear of failure. If the business flopped, at least Daniel wouldn't know I had tried and failed. Perhaps it was his increasingly traditional views about our roles. He had started making comments about how his mother had managed their household so efficiently, subtle suggestions that perhaps I should focus on creating a comfortable home rather than pursuing career ambitions. Whatever the reason, I found myself living a double life. When Daniel left for work, I would transform our spare bedroom into a busy consultant's office. I took client calls, created marketing strategies, and built a growing business, all while Daniel believed I was still submitting job applications to corporations. I set up a separate bank account for business income, justifying it as proper financial management for tax purposes. The thrill of landing my first client who paid $3,000 for a comprehensive social media strategy was something I celebrated alone. When that client referred 3 others, I had to contain my excitement at dinner with Daniel, who was complaining about his own work stress. My business grew faster than I anticipated. Within 6 months, I had developed a signature approach to digital marketing for small businesses that produced measurable results. Clients raved about the return on investment and referrals poured in. I expanded my services to include online courses, teaching basic marketing principles to entrepreneurs, creating a passive income stream alongside my consulting work. Managing this secret became increasingly complicated. I scheduled client meetings during Daniel's work hours, took business calls in my car if he was home unexpectedly, and explained packages delivered to our house as supplies for job applications or things I ordered for the house. By the end of the first year, my business was generating more monthly income than my previous corporate salary. The separate bank account held a substantial balance, and I began discreetly covering more household expenses to compensate for my perceived unemployment. When our refrigerator broke, I insisted on paying for the replacement from my savings, which Daniel reluctantly accepted while commenting that we needed to be careful with money since we were living on one income. The stress of maintaining this deception weighed on me. Several times I planned to reveal everything to Daniel, encouraged by the business's undeniable success. Each time something held me back. Once it was Daniel making a dismissive comment about a friend's wife who played around with an Etsy shop instead of getting a real job. Another time it was his parents visiting, and his father asking when I would stop the job hunt nonsense and focus on giving them grandchildren. I told myself I would come clean once the business hit a significant milestone, perhaps when I reached consistent 6-figure annual revenue. But as that milestone approached and then passed, I still kept my success a secret, the deception having taken on a life of its own. By our 6th year of marriage, the dynamics between Daniel and me had shifted dramatically. What began as mild impatience about my unemployment had evolved into barely concealed resentment. Daniel complained constantly about the financial pressure he felt as the sole provider, despite the fact that I was secretly covering many of our expenses. "Do you know how stressful it is to be responsible for everything?" he would say during arguments. "I never signed up to support someone indefinitely." His comments cut deep, especially given the reality of my thriving business. I was actually earning more than him now, but he had no idea. The separate bank account I had established for my business now held a substantial balance approaching $200,000 in savings beyond what I reinvested in the company. Daniel began complaining to our friends and family about his burden. At dinner parties, he would make jokes about how I spent my days watching television while he worked himself to exhaustion. I would smile tightly through these comments, fighting the urge to reveal that I had been working since before he woke up and would return to my laptop after he went to bed. Meanwhile, Jessica became Daniel's primary confidant about our marriage issues. She would nod sympathetically when he complained, offering him the understanding he claimed I denied him. I noticed their increasing closeness, but dismissed my concerns as paranoia born from guilt about my own secret. "You should talk to Jessica," Daniel suggested after one particularly heated argument about finances. "She understands the importance of contributing equally to a marriage." Social events became battlegrounds of passive-aggressive comments and tense silences. Daniel's parents no longer bothered to hide their disappointment in me, making pointed remarks about women who waste their education and take advantage of hard-working husbands. I made several attempts to discuss revealing my business with Daniel. I would begin conversations about our future, trying to gauge if he had softened his stance on what constituted real work. Each time, his dismissive attitude toward entrepreneurship convinced me to postpone the revelation. "Did you see that post from Mark's wife about her social media consulting?" Daniel laughed one evening. "As if posting on Instagram is a career. At least she works part-time at a real company." Daniel began working late more frequently, often not coming home until after I had gone to bed. His explanations about project deadlines seemed plausible, but the emotional distance between us continued to grow. He became protective of his phone, taking calls in another room and keeping the screen angled away from me when reading messages. My suspicions grew when I noticed frequent texts from Jessica appearing on his phone. Once I glimpsed a notification that read simply, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow," before Daniel quickly dismissed it. When I asked about lunch plans with Jessica, he claimed they occasionally met to discuss a surprise birthday party they were planning for me. The explanation seemed reasonable, yet something felt off. The confirmation came when I had to meet a client downtown near Daniel's office. As I was leaving the coffee shop after my meeting, I spotted Daniel and Jessica at a restaurant across the street. They weren't simply having lunch. They were holding hands across the table, and as I watched in shocked silence, Jessica leaned forward to kiss him briefly. I didn't confront them. Instead, I went home, logged into my business accounts, and reviewed the numbers that had become my secret source of pride. The business had just crossed the $500,000 annual revenue mark. In any other circumstance, this would be a moment of celebration, a validation of my decision to leave corporate life and bet on myself. Instead, it felt hollow against the backdrop of my crumbling marriage. That evening, Daniel came home later than usual. His hair was damp as if recently showered, and he smelled of unfamiliar cologne. He barely acknowledged me before heading to the kitchen to pour himself a whiskey, something he rarely did on weeknights. "We need to talk," he said, finally sitting across from me at the dining table we had chosen together years ago. I waited, wondering if he would confess, if there was still a chance for honesty between us. "This isn't working anymore." He continued, staring at his glass rather than meeting my eyes. "I need a partner who contributes, who understands the value of hard work. I didn't sign up to support someone who refuses to get a real job." The irony of his statement might have been comical if it wasn't so painful. I opened my mouth to finally reveal the truth about my business, to throw his accusations back in his face with proof of my success. "I've been building a business that's now earning $500,000 annually," I began. But Daniel interrupted before I could continue. "I don't want to hear more excuses or about some new hobby you think might make money someday. I want a divorce." The finality in his voice stunned me into silence. All the explanations I had rehearsed over the months died on my lips as he continued. "You've had years to find employment. I've supported you, been patient, given you every opportunity to contribute meaningfully to this marriage. I can't do it anymore. I need someone who shares my values about work and success." The cruel irony of his words left me speechless. I had built a business more successful than his career while he believed I was doing nothing. Now, as he condemned me for exactly what I wasn't guilty of, I couldn't find the words to defend myself. "I'll be staying at a friend's place tonight," he said, standing up and grabbing a pre-packed overnight bag from the hall closet, evidence that this speech was not spontaneous. "We can discuss the details of separating our assets later." As the front door closed behind him, I remained at the table, surrounded by the trappings of the life we had built together, wondering how everything had gone so terribly wrong. The days following Daniel's departure were a blur of emotions. Despite the betrayal, despite knowing about his relationship with Jessica, I felt a profound sense of loss. 7 years of marriage doesn't simply vanish overnight, even when it ends with deception. After allowing myself 48 hours to process the initial shock, I contacted a divorce attorney recommended by a business colleague. Diana Winters had a reputation for handling complex financial situations with discretion and strategic thinking, exactly what I needed. "So, let me understand correctly," Diana said during our first consultation. "You've built a successful business generating $500,000 annually, but your husband is unaware of this income." When I confirmed this was the case, Diana looked concerned. "This creates a complicated situation. In a divorce, both parties are legally required to disclose all assets and income. However, the timing of this disclosure needs to be strategic." She advised me to document everything related to my business client contracts, bank statements, expenses, and especially any communications showing that Daniel had discouraged my entrepreneurial efforts. These would be crucial if he later tried to claim a significant portion of my business. "The business is undeniably marital property since it was developed during your marriage," Diana explained. "However, his active discouragement and dismissal of your work may impact how the court views his entitlement to its value." As I gathered the required documentation, I learned through mutual friends that Daniel had indeed been staying at Jessica's apartment. What he had presented as a new arrangement born of necessity was clearly an established situation. According to one friend who had seen them together weeks before our separation, they showed the comfortable familiarity of a couple accustomed to each other's presence. Daniel filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences, the standard language that revealed nothing about his infidelity. His initial settlement proposal included keeping our house since, as he claimed he had paid the mortgage throughout our marriage. Diana advised patience and careful timing. "Right now, he believes he's in a position of financial power. Let's allow him to maintain that belief a little longer while we prepare our strategy." Our mutual friends largely sided with Daniel after hearing his version of events. In his telling, he was the dedicated husband who supported his wife for years, while she refused to work until he finally reached his breaking point. Only a few questioned this narrative, wondering why Daniel had moved on so quickly with Jessica. Jessica's complete disappearance from my life spoke volumes. My supposed best friend didn't call, text, or attempt to explain. Her social media showed no acknowledgement of the 7 years of friendship we had shared. It was as if I had never existed in her life. Through a mutual acquaintance who worked at Jessica's company, I learned that her relationship with Daniel had begun at least 6 months before our separation. They had been seen together at restaurants far from our usual haunts, and Jessica had mentioned seeing someone new to colleagues while I was still believing in my marriage. I sent Jessica a single text message with a photo of her and Daniel at the restaurant where I had seen them, simply asking, "How long?" Her response was surprisingly callous. "You neglected him for years while you sat at home doing nothing. He needed someone who understood his value. Maybe if you'd been a real partner instead of a dependent, things would be different." The bitter irony of her assessment was not lost on me. If only she knew that I had built a 6-figure business while she was destroying our friendship. Daniel pushed to finalize the divorce, quickly attempting to bypass the standard financial discovery process by offering what he considered a generous settlement. I could keep my personal possessions, while he would retain the house investments and retirement accounts. Diana advised against accepting anything until we had full financial disclosure. "He's rushing because he's hiding something, either assets or the extent of his relationship with Jessica. Let's not allow him to dictate the timeline." The emotional toll of the dual betrayal affected my business performance temporarily. For the first time since starting my company, I missed client deadlines and found myself struggling to maintain the creative energy necessary for marketing strategies. I referred some projects to trusted colleagues and scaled back new client acquisitions to focus on existing relationships. With most of my former social circle either siding with Daniel or uncomfortable maintaining friendships with both of us, I found support in unexpected places. A business owners group I had joined online became a source of understanding and encouragement. These entrepreneurs, many of whom had navigated personal challenges while building their companies, offered both practical advice and emotional support. I also began working with a therapist who specialized in betrayal trauma. Dr. Melanie Sparks helped me process not only the pain of Daniel's infidelity, but also my own role in creating distance through my secret business life. While his betrayal and affair are entirely his responsibility, Dr. Sparks noted, it's worth examining why you felt unable to share your success with your husband. That separate secret life contributed to the emotional distance between you, even if it doesn't excuse his actions. These sessions helped me recognize that despite the devastating end of my marriage, I had created something valuable and sustainable in my business. This realization strengthened my resolve to protect what I had built while moving forward with integrity, even if Daniel had chosen a different path. As the divorce proceedings continued, I maintained the facade of the unemployed wife Daniel believed me to be. Diana assured me this approach would provide strategic advantage when the time came for full financial disclosure. I was building strength for the moment when everything would change. 3 months after Daniel moved out, we met for a mediation session with our respective attorneys. Diana had prepared me thoroughly for this moment, and I felt a strange calm as I entered the conference room at her office building. Daniel sat across the table looking confident in an expensive new suit. His attorney, a stern older man named Harold Jenkins, had a reputation for aggressive negotiation tactics. Jessica had dropped Daniel off, making a point of kissing him goodbye where I could see through the office windows. The mediator, a retired judge named Barbara Wilson, began by establishing the purpose of the session to reach an equitable division of assets without requiring court intervention. She asked each side to present their position on the marital estate. Harold spoke first, presenting Daniel as the responsible provider who had supported an unemployed wife for years. My client has been the sole financial contributor to this marriage for the past 2 years, Harold stated firmly. He has maintained the household, paid the mortgage, and covered all expenses, while Mrs. Williams refused to seek employment despite her education and prior work experience. In light of these circumstances, Mr. Williams is entitled to retain the majority of the marital assets, including the family home and investment accounts he funded through his employment. The mediator nodded and turned to Diana. And your client's position? Diana smiled slightly. Before we address the division of assets, we'd like to correct several factual misrepresentations in opposing counsel's statement, specifically the assertion that my client has not been employed or contributing financially to the marriage. She slid a folder across the table. These documents demonstrate that Mrs. Williams has been operating a successful digital marketing consultancy for the past 2 years, generating significant income that has directly and indirectly supported the household. Daniel's expression transformed from smug confidence to visible shock as he opened the folder. Inside were bank statements showing monthly deposits far exceeding his salary, client contracts with major businesses, and tax filings for my LLC. As you can see, Diana continued calmly, Mrs. Williams' business generated $500,000 in revenue last year alone. Far from being financially dependent on Mr. Williams, she has been discreetly covering numerous household expenses, including the new roof on the marital home, the replacement refrigerator, and the couple's last vacation to Hawaii. Daniel's face flushed red as he flipped through the documents. "This is impossible," he sputtered. "She's been at home doing nothing for 2 years. This must be recent or fabricated." The mediator reviewed the documents carefully. "These appear to be legitimate business records dating back 2 years, Mr. Williams. Did you have no knowledge of your wife's business activities?" Before Daniel could respond, Harold requested a brief recess to review the new information with his client. They disappeared into a side office where Daniel's raised voice could be heard even through the closed door. When they returned 15 minutes later, Daniel's demeanor had changed completely. Gone was the confident man who believed he held all the power. In his place sat someone calculating and cold. "If these records are accurate," Harold stated, "then this business represents a significant marital asset that should be divided equally between the parties. My client is entitled to half the value of this business that was built during the marriage, using marital resources such as the home office in the marital residence." Diana was prepared for this argument. "We anticipated this position and have prepared a response. While we acknowledge that businesses built during a marriage are typically considered marital property, this case presents unique circumstances." She produced another set of documents, these containing text messages, emails, and notes from conversations where Daniel had explicitly dismissed my business efforts. As these communications demonstrate, Mr. Williams repeatedly characterized my client's entrepreneurial efforts as playing around online, not a real job, and a waste of time. He actively discouraged her business, creating an environment where she felt compelled to operate in secret. We will argue, if necessary, that his consistent devaluation and active discouragement of the business negates his claim to its value. Daniel leaned forward, his expression shifting again. "Amaya, can we talk privately? I think there's been a misunderstanding between us." The mediator looked to me for my response. I shook my head. "I believe everything that needs to be said can be said here, with counsel present." I replied, surprised by the steadiness of my own voice. The negotiation that followed was tense, but ultimately productive. Diana had built a compelling case for me, retaining full ownership of my business while making reasonable concessions on other assets. Daniel would keep the house, which I had grown to associate with our failed marriage anyway, and specific investment accounts we had established together. I would keep my business entirely, my separate savings, and certain personal items of sentimental value. As the terms were finalized, Daniel made one last attempt to speak with me alone. As we gathered our belongings, he approached me while Diana was speaking with the mediator. "I had no idea you were so successful," he said quietly. "Why didn't you tell me we could have worked through our issues if I had known?" I looked at the man I had once loved, now a stranger who had shared intimate details of our marriage with my friend before betraying me with her. Would it have mattered, Daniel? Would knowing I was earning money have kept you faithful? Or would it just have given you reason to stay in a marriage you were already cheating on? His expression confirmed what I already knew. The money would have mattered to him, perhaps enough to hide his relationship with Jessica, but not enough to actually honor our vows. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry about how things happened with Jessica," he offered lamely. "Are you sorry it happened or sorry I found out?" I asked, already knowing the answer from his averted gaze. The divorce was finalized 2 weeks later. I signed the papers feeling a profound mixture of grief and relief. The life I had envisioned with Daniel was over, but a new chapter was beginning, one where I no longer had to hide my success or diminish myself to maintain someone else's comfort. The day after signing the divorce papers, I moved into a luxury apartment in downtown Seattle with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay. That first evening, I opened a bottle of champagne I had been saving for a special business milestone and stood at the window watching the sunset. There was pain, certainly. 7 years of marriage doesn't end without leaving scars. But as I sipped my champagne and looked out over the city lights, I felt something unexpected: freedom. Freedom to build my business openly, to celebrate my success, without apology, to live authentically, without fear of judgment or dismissal. The woman reflected in the window glass was stronger than she had been a year ago, more certain of her value and clear-eyed about the future she was creating for herself. That woman raised her glass in a silent toast to new beginnings. With the divorce finalized, I threw myself into growing my business with a renewed sense of purpose. No longer operating in secret, I leased a small but stylish office space in a downtown Seattle high-rise, hired my first 3 employees, and officially launched Prism Digital Marketing as a full-service agency for small to medium businesses. The timing coincided with a feature in Seattle Business Monthly highlighting women entrepreneurs transforming the local business landscape. The article detailed my innovative approach to digital marketing for underserved business segments and included professional photos of me in the new office. The publicity generated an influx of client inquiries and established my reputation in the broader business community. My team expanded to include 2 talented content creators, a web developer and a data analyst who could provide clients with measurable results from our marketing strategies. With this expanded capacity, we took on larger projects and more ambitious campaigns, pushing annual revenue to $750,000 within 6 months of going public. Through social media, I discovered that Daniel and Jessica had gotten engaged just 2 months after our divorce was finalized. Their wedding announcement appeared in the Seattle Times social pages, featuring a professional engagement photo of them on a yacht in Elliott Bay. Jessica wore an enormous diamond ring, and the announcement mentioned Daniel's position as Senior Financial Advisor at Wellington Accounting, while describing Jessica as a marketing executive. Seeing their wedding photos posted across social media platforms produced a complex emotional reaction. There was pain, certainly, at the visual confirmation of their relationship that had begun while I was still believing in my marriage. But there was also a strange sense of disconnection, as if I was observing the life of someone I used to know rather than my own recent past. My focus remained firmly on building my business and creating a new life. I redecorated my apartment, enrolled in a photography class I had always wanted to take, and joined a hiking group that explored trails throughout the Pacific Northwest. These new activities brought new friendships untainted by connections to my previous life with Daniel. 6 months after the divorce, I was dining with Jackson Chen, a potential business partner at Canlis, one of Seattle's most exclusive restaurants. We were discussing a joint venture to develop specialized marketing courses for entrepreneurs when I noticed Daniel and Jessica being seated at a table across the dining room. Jessica spotted me immediately. She whispered something to Daniel, who turned to look in my direction with an unreadable expression. Rather than acknowledging me, they engaged in an obvious display of affection, Jessica draping herself across Daniel's arm and kissing his cheek while watching for my reaction. I returned my attention to Jackson, and our business discussion determined not to give them the satisfaction of disrupting my evening. However, as Jackson excused himself to take an important call, Jessica approached my table. "Amaya, what a surprise," she said, her voice carrying just enough to attract attention from nearby diners. "Daniel and I are celebrating our 3-month anniversary. Marriage suits him so well, don't you think?" She extended her left hand, making sure the large diamond caught the light. We've just put a deposit on a vacation home in the San Juan Islands. Daniel says it's important to invest in quality of life. I maintained my composure, offering a polite smile. Congratulations on your marriage, Jessica. I wish you both well. That's very generous considering everything, she replied, clearly disappointed by my measured response. We heard your little business is doing well. It's so inspiring to see women finding fulfilling hobbies after divorce. Before I could respond, Daniel appeared at her side looking uncomfortable. Jessica, we should return to our table, he said, nodding briefly in my direction. Amaya. Daniel, I acknowledged. Congratulations on your marriage. As they walked away, I heard Jessica say loudly enough for me to hear, I still can't believe she kept that business secret. Imagine being so insecure you can't even tell your husband about your success. The interaction left me momentarily shaken, but Jackson's return pulled me back to the present and the exciting business opportunity before me. By the end of dinner, we had outlined a plan for our joint venture that would expand both our companies' reach considerably. Through mutual connections in the business community, I occasionally heard updates about Daniel and Jessica's life. She had indeed quit her job shortly after their wedding, apparently fulfilling her ambition to be a trophy wife, despite her previous criticism of my perceived unemployment. According to a former colleague who still worked with Daniel, Jessica's spending habits were causing financial strain, particularly her insistence on renovating their home to match those featured in luxury magazines. More concerning for Daniel was the announcement of major downsizing at Wellington Accounting following the loss of several key clients. While he hadn't been included in the first round of layoffs, the company's unstable position had everyone on edge. A chance encounter with Daniel's mother at a charity event revealed an unexpected shift in her perception of me. Martha Williams had been openly critical during our marriage, particularly regarding my reluctance to start a family immediately. At the charity auction, she approached me with surprising warmth. Amaya, you look wonderful, she said, embracing me briefly. I've been following your company's success in the business journal. You've built something remarkable. Before I could respond with more than a surprised thank you, she continued in a lower voice. I owe you an apology for my judgment during your marriage. I didn't understand your drive to establish yourself professionally before starting a family. Now I see your wisdom. She glanced around to ensure we weren't overheard. Between us, I worry about Jessica's influence on Daniel. She's encouraged him to live beyond their means, and with Wellington's troubles. She trailed off, then squeezed my hand. But that's not your concern anymore. I'm glad to see you thriving. Through other social connections, I heard rumors that Jessica had been seen around town with a wealthy real estate developer, often when Daniel was working late. I chose not to dwell on this information, focusing instead on my growing business and the new life I was building. One significant part of that new life was purchasing my dream home, a modern 3-bedroom house with a dedicated office space and stunning views of Mount Rainier. Unlike the home I had shared with Daniel, which had been chosen primarily for its investment potential and proximity to his office, this house reflected my personal aesthetic and priorities. I paid for it outright with business profits, a fact that gave me immense satisfaction. With my business established and personal life stabilizing, I also founded the Phoenix Foundation, a nonprofit organization providing grants and mentorship to women leaving toxic work environments to start their own businesses. The foundation's name reflected my own journey from corporate burnout to entrepreneurial success. Dating again came gradually and on my own terms. Through a business conference, I met Marcus Devereaux, the founder of an educational technology company that complemented my marketing expertise. Unlike Daniel Marcus, viewed my ambition and success as attractive qualities rather than threats to his ego. Our relationship developed slowly but steadily, built on mutual respect and shared values about partnership. As my personal and professional life flourished, the drama of Daniel and Jessica's relationship faded into background noise, occasional updates from mutual acquaintances rather than central concerns in my life. I had truly moved forward carrying lessons from the past, but not defined by its pain. Exactly 1 year after my divorce was finalized, Prism Digital Marketing reached a significant milestone: $1 million in annual revenue. We celebrated by opening a second office in Portland and launching a formal mentorship program for women in marketing and entrepreneurship. The company had grown to 15 employees across both locations, with a client roster including some of the most innovative small businesses in the Pacific Northwest. Our case studies were being featured in marketing textbooks, and I had been invited to speak at several prestigious business conferences. On the evening of our company celebration, I returned home to find an unexpected email from Daniel in my personal inbox. The subject line read simply, "Can we talk?" The message was brief. "I know I'm the last person you probably want to hear from, but I need to speak with you about something important. Could we meet for coffee this week, Daniel?" My initial instinct was to ignore the message. Whatever crisis had prompted Daniel to reach out was no longer my concern. But curiosity prevailed, and I replied, agreeing to meet at a neutral coffee shop downtown. I arrived deliberately 5 minutes late, wanting to maintain control of the interaction. Daniel was already seated at a corner table, hunched over a cup of coffee, looking nothing like the confident man I had married. In just 1 year, he appeared to have aged significantly. His hair showed strands of gray, deep lines framed his eyes, and his shoulders slumped in a posture of defeat. He stood awkwardly when he saw me approach. "Amaya, thank you for coming. You look amazing." I took the seat across from him, setting clear boundaries with my body language. "You wanted to talk, Daniel. I have a meeting in 45 minutes, so let's get to it." He nodded, running a hand through his hair nervously. "I don't even know where to begin. Everything's fallen apart." Over the next 20 minutes, Daniel detailed the collapse of his new life. Jessica had indeed been having an affair, ironically, with his boss at Wellington. When discovered, the fallout resulted in Daniel being demoted rather than his boss facing consequences. "She didn't even try to deny it," he said, staring into his coffee. "Said she needed someone who could keep up with her lifestyle expectations. Turns out, I was just a stepping stone to someone wealthier." The financial picture was equally bleak. Jessica's spending had created substantial credit card debt, and they had taken out a second mortgage to fund renovations on the house. With his reduced income following the demotion, they had missed several mortgage payments. "The house is in foreclosure." He admitted the words, clearly painful to speak aloud. "All the equity we had gone. And Jessica left last month. She's moving in with Stephen, my former boss." The irony was not lost on me. The man who had left me for my best friend, claiming he wanted a real working wife, was now abandoned by that same woman for his boss. "I'm sorry for what you're going through," I said, and found that I genuinely meant it. Despite everything, I took no pleasure in seeing him broken. Daniel looked up with a hint of his old confidence. "I've had a lot of time to think about everything. About us. I was wrong, Amaya. So wrong about what matters in a marriage." He reached across the table as if to take my hand, but I subtly shifted away. "I see your business in the news, see what you've built. I understand now why you kept it secret from me. I wasn't supportive. I was threatened by your potential." "Yes, you were," I agreed calmly. "But keeping the business secret was my mistake too. Marriages shouldn't contain secrets that big." Daniel nodded eagerly. Exactly. We both made mistakes. But we could learn from them, couldn't we? Start fresh with everything out in the open. I realized with a start that this conversation was leading to a suggestion of reconciliation. The very idea was so unexpected that it took me a moment to process. Daniel, are you suggesting we get back together? He leaned forward, suddenly animated. Is that so crazy? We were good together once, and now that I understand what you've built, I could support you properly. We could be partners in the true sense. I studied the man across from me, searching for feelings that had once consumed my life. There was nothing but a distant echo of familiarity, like recognizing a street from childhood that no longer feels like home. I'm seeing someone, I said gently. But even if I wasn't, we can't go backward. You didn't leave because I kept a secret. You left because you were having an affair with my best friend. You made that choice long before you knew about my business. His face fell. I made a terrible mistake. The biggest of my life. Yes, I agreed. You did. And I've made peace with that. I've built a new life that I love with people who value me completely. We sat in silence for a moment before I continued. I can't give you what you're looking for, Daniel, but I can offer you some professional advice if you want it. He looked surprised, but nodded. For the next 15 minutes, I outlined strategies for rebuilding his professional reputation, suggested financial advisors who specialized in debt recovery, and recommended resources for emotional healing. Your life isn't over because of these setbacks, I told him as I prepared to leave. But the life we had together is. I wish you well in building something new. As I walked away, I felt a profound sense of closure. The conversation that might once have devastated me, or worse, tempted me back into a dysfunctional relationship, had instead confirmed how completely I had moved forward. Through mutual connections, I later learned that Jessica had indeed left Daniel for his wealthier boss, moving into a waterfront condominium, while Daniel was forced to rent a small apartment after the foreclosure. The social circles that had once sided with them in the divorce now whispered about the karma of it all. More surprisingly, Daniel's parents reached out to me several months after our coffee meeting. They invited me to lunch where they apologized for their judgment during my marriage to their son and expressed admiration for what I had accomplished professionally. We pushed old-fashioned values on Daniel that didn't serve him well in the modern world, Richard Williams admitted. We're trying to do better now to understand that partnerships take many forms. My professional success continued to grow. The feature in Forbes' 40 Under 40 list highlighted not just my business achievements, but also the Phoenix Foundation's work supporting women entrepreneurs. The publicity generated new opportunities for both the company and the foundation, expanding our impact beyond the Pacific Northwest. My relationship with Marcus deepened, built on mutual respect and genuine partnership. Unlike my marriage to Daniel, there were no secrets between us. Marcus celebrated my success as his own just as I championed his achievements. Looking back on the journey from secret entrepreneur to public success, I recognized that hiding my achievements had been wrong regardless of Daniel's behavior. True confidence comes from authenticity, from owning your value without apology or concealment. At a women's business conference where I was invited to deliver the keynote address, I spoke honestly about my journey, including the mistake of hiding my success and the freedom found in living authentically. The standing ovation that followed reflected not just appreciation for my business insights, but recognition of a shared experience among many women who had diminished themselves to maintain relationships. 6 months after our coffee meeting, I received a brief email from Daniel. He had accepted a position with a firm in Chicago and was starting fresh in a new city. "Thank you for the advice that day," he wrote. "It helped me find a path forward when I couldn't see one." I wished him well, genuinely hoping he would find happiness and growth from the experience. His choices had caused pain, but they had also indirectly set me free to become the woman I was meant to be. The Phoenix Foundation funded its first cohort of 10 female entrepreneurs that year, each woman receiving not just financial support, but mentorship from successful business owners who had navigated their own challenging journeys. Watching these women launch their ventures with confidence and support, I felt a sense of purpose beyond anything I had imagined during my marriage. Marcus proposed during a weekend hiking trip to Mount Rainier, the mountain visible from my dream house. Unlike my engagement to Daniel, this decision came from a place of strength rather than completion. Two whole individuals choosing to build something together rather than expecting the other to fill a void. As I prepare to begin this new chapter, I reflect on the unexpected journey that brought me here. Losing Daniel and Jessica was not truly a loss, but a redirection toward what I was meant to become. The betrayal that once seemed devastating became the catalyst for building a life more authentic and fulfilling than I had imagined possible. If you've ever faced betrayal or had to reinvent yourself after a relationship ended, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. How did you find strength when everything seemed to fall apart? Don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you, and share it with someone who might need to be reminded of their own resilience today. Remember, sometimes the greatest blessings come disguised as our worst heartbreaks. Thank you for listening to my journey.